I'm tired of being divided against each other for political reasons, like this president's done. He gave a speech at a mosque, basically implying that America is discriminating against Muslims.
President Obama yesterday goes to a mosque and he apologizes. I mean, what's going on? We have to, right? No, he goes in and he apologizes. And, it's all fine, but we have to find out what's going on.
Well, there's new reaction from Republican presidential candidates after President Obama's remarks during his visit to a Baltimore mosque this week. Donald Trump saying the president apologizes while Americans are being targeted by Islamic terrorists. Zuhdi Jasser is the president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy and the author of A Battle for the Soul of Islam. Welcome, Zuhdi. Good to have you on the show. I know that you feel very strongly about the president's visit to this mosque, saying that you really believe he was using it as a political prop and nothing more than that, instead of addressing the key issues that are central to fighting terrorism.
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, you can't help but put it in context of when he decided now in the 8th year of his presidency to do this visit. Now, listen, the speech he gave was beautiful, it was eloquent. I mean, it's what I tell my kids every night about the beauty of America, its inclusivity and our need to have a broad tent. An attack on one faith is an attack on all. But listen, he was talking to Muslims almost as if we're children. If we're adults, we have to deal with the fact that the intersection of Islam, Muslims, and America right now is not just about bigotry against Muslims, but rather the bigger issue, a global one, is about political Islam, about radical Islam. And the mosque he chose was the most insulting thing, in that mosque is one that has gender apartheid, has had severe homophobia from its sermon, has been radicalizing Muslims for years with Brotherhood ties. I mean, it was under surveillance just 5 years ago because of a Muslim from that mosque that was going to attack an army recruitment camp. And yet, the president's lecturing conservatives about bigotry from there, when in fact he really actually is dividing America and not helping us look at solutions.
Well, if all that is in play, then why do you think the White House chose this as the setting to make this speech, given the fact that there's so much controversy tied to this mosque?
Well, it might be its advisors. I mean, many of the Muslim advisors I think the president uses are tied to Muslim Brotherhood interests, so they're blind to the conveyor belt of misogyny, gender apartheid that exists in these mosques and radicalizing Muslims. It could also be that basically the president's axis of the way he looks at everything is partisanship. So if he can go and lecture conservatives between Iowa and New Hampshire about how they treat Muslims, and some politicians end up taking the bait. We have to be careful that we can't take that bait, that when he talked about Jefferson, why didn't he talk about Jefferson's fight against theocracy and that Muslims need to fight also now against theocracy? And I think that's part of the message that I hope to see from conservatives also.
When you say the conservatives, you're talking about people who are part of the Muslim reform movement like yourself, and you're urging the White House to take a hard look at some of the principles that are backing this movement, and you contend that you're basically getting no response at all to the principles that have been put forward.
Yeah, the president was lecturing Ummah about bigotry and inclusivity. And yet, the way he approached the Muslim community is really a bigotry of low expectations, that somehow we are destined and sentenced to be run in a tribal way by these misogynists and those who are still stuck in the 13th century interpretation of Sharia law, who, as he left that mosque, will put back the curtain and separate men and women. We'll talk about America as being anti-Muslim and not under God, etc. So why not engage the Muslim reform movement? There was a protest of women who actually share his liberal values outside that mosque as he was speaking, saying, why go to this mosque? Why not engage, yes, they're minority, but engage some of the minority mosques that don't separate men and women, that don't treat gays as mental deviants, as the sermon at that mosque said only a few years ago. But unfortunately, many of us reformers don't look at this as a partisan issue, but the president simply wanted to exploit it as a partisan issue.
And the fact that it's now part of the campaign now has become a political football in the campaign. What's your reaction to that?
Well, listen, the Muslims might only be a minority, 3 to 4 million in America, but the way American Muslims address radical Islam and the need for reform, I mean, the president used the same bigotry of low expectations in engaging Iran, engaging Saudi Arabia, ignoring the masses that want to be free there. And I think now, as we contextualize in this campaign season, where national security, where religious freedom and all these things intersect, I hope the campaigns begin to look at how we engage reformers and show leadership and not just just pandering to both extremes in this situation and look at solutions that many of us Muslims are ready to do in a nonpartisan way as part of the Muslim reform movement.
Zudi Jasser, great to have you today. Thank you so much for joining us with your insights. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, I appreciate it.